So Eric Ries in the Lean Startup book talks about the build, measure, learn cycle. This is a cycle that is very commonly used in startups to try to get to product market fit as soon as possible. So let's talk about this framework and what the idea behind is. Eric Ries draws inspiration from lean manufacturing at Toyota. Toyota tried to move from a typical life cycle to do production just in time, basically getting an order, having all the materials available so you could deliver on the order that you have received. Of course, this has changed over the years, and you can imagine that this is not necessarily how cars are being built, and Toyota is maybe not necessarily in the best days of its life. But the fundamentals of lean manufacturing still made a lot of sense. This is how Eric Ries came to the lean startup methodology. When it comes to the build, measure, learn framework, this is basically the cornerstone of the lean startup book. Eric Ries proposed the next. First of all, as a startup entrepreneur, you have an idea, you have a vision, something that you have identified, a problem that customers have out there and that you need to solve it. So your first action would be to build a small prototype to try to solve that problem that you have identified. You don't want to build anything big, you want to stay really small to validate that the problem exists there and that the solution potentially is going in the right direction. When talking about building, Eric Ries also connects to the concept of MVP, minimum viable product. Always build the smallest, the minimum product that would address the problem that you're trying to solve. Never try to build a full-fledged product, even to the point that the product might not even be a product, might be just a prototype, might be that there's no actual product, there's no technology behind it, that is like a concierge MVP, where somebody's actually performing the tasks behind the scenes that the actual product will have to do without the user necessarily knowing. Zalando was famous at this in the beginning when I think that they started by selling shoes, and basically what they were doing is I think that they, if I remember correctly, they were putting them in the website, the shoes that they were offering. When people ordered them, they went to a shop, buy them, package them, deliver them, and all that was done by the founders of the startup at that point. The idea here was to prove that the problem existed and that the solution was good. After that, you had to be able to measure the results. And here he talks a lot about following metrics that make sense for you and for the product to be successful. He makes a difference between vanity metrics and actionable metrics. Vanity metrics are metrics that are not going to tell you much about the actual success of the product. They're going to be things like page views, things like downloads of an app, but they're not going to tell you if people are actually using. Many people that download an app, they actually realistically don't end up using it. So how can you measure the successful usage of your product? This is what you have to look at. And this can be many things. It can be that they have gone through some kind of journey that you have defined through it within the product. And once you complete that journey, then you can say that they have successfully finalized the journey. Then you can count that metric. Vanity metrics are metrics that potentially look really good, but they're not necessarily showing you the success of the product. And then finally, he talks about learning. And here he also says that you have to make sure that you are doing validated learning and not just learning. Of course, you can learn many things. They're not necessarily validated with the assumptions that you have, and they're not necessarily moving you forward towards the goals that you have. Validated learning is typically done by actually building that product, define what are the KPIs, and understanding that the actions they have reached to a certain goal. Then I can understand that, hey, people have used my product at certain times and they have used it a certain way. Then I can understand if my product has been successful or not. This means that once I understand this, then I can make the decision of what is my next increment in the product that I will be building. So I might have to retweak the journey that I had if it was as successful as the KPI that I might have defined, or if it was successful, then I can continue building towards the vision that I created in the very beginning. So what is the significance of this framework? The idea that Eric Ries is talking about is that you have to make sure that all the time you're moving in this cycle. And this is very important for then the startups, because this is the way that they can prove that they are gaining customers. And of course, startups usually have a kind of a cash problem that they are not flooded by money. So they are limited on the number of times that they can do this kind of iteration. But this way they can understand and see quite quick that they are testing an idea and they fail fast if the assumption or the idea is wrong. And they don't want to spend a lot of time implementing an idea that is not going to advance them towards the vision that they have or towards building the business that they want to have. So what you want is to iterate as fast as possible within this loop. And this depends on The product that you are building, you can do it really fast, especially in the very early stages when you just want to test a potential problem and solution. Like the very early stages, sometimes it can be just a website that you can actually try to see if people sign up to the idea that you have created. Later stages potentially are going to take more time to develop, but still you want to make that cycle as short as possible. And of course, linked to this is the idea of pivoting. If your measure and learn part of the loop actually give you the result that your exercise was not correct, it might be that it's time for you to pivot, to actually change directions and move into a direction that you actually solve a user need and potentially build a profitable business. The idea is that with these metrics, this potentially is what then you can talk with your VCs on the potential adoption of your product. You are actually building those journeys and actually you're measuring them. You are showing adoption of your product. This is also a very important way for you to validate towards those investors that your product is something that users need. If you're not familiar with the works of Eric Ries, I definitely recommend you to go and check out his book. I also have a video where I talk about his book and review it, and you can check that video up here. I will see you in the next one, and remember, stay safe.